Hi, this is Brian Russell, and this is Walking and Talking Spirituality. Last week I talked about that dilemma of whether to plant flowers or to plant fruit trees. And that seems to have resonated with quite a few people, including myself. And as I've been in conversations with friends and colleagues and persons that work with me in spiritual formation groups, we talked a little bit about something that's literally right underneath the flowers and the fruit trees, and it's soil. Because as most of you know, you can't plant anything if the soil's not good. And you can't always tell if the soil's good from the outside. I remember my first home, when we bought it, there was a spot in the front yard and it always died, and I would always bring fresh sod in to fix it. And I remember the first time that I did it, the neighbors came out, and you know, neighbors, especially when you're the new guy, they always want to come out and be helpful. And they just came out and said, "Oh, you'll never get it to grow there." Ed and Carol, those are the previous owners, so it's still Ed and Carol's front yard. Ed and Carol could never get it to grow. You're not going to be able to get it to grow either. And I thought, well, I'll just put a little extra water on there. So I put the sod down, and it, just like before, it turned brown again. Repeated this a couple different seasons, but then, you know, one day I was thinking about Jesus' parable of the soil, where you have 4 different types of soils. And if you know the story, 1, there's no growth at all. 1, there's abundant growth, but then there's these 2 kind of intermediate spots. It's soil that's too thin, it's rocky, so it starts to grow and then dies. And then there's soil that when the seeds grow, it gets choked out by weeds, right? And so I thought about that front yard, and most importantly, I thought about my own heart. And how can we tell if our soil's good or not, so that we can have that choice of planting flowers and or fruit trees? Well, really deep in thought about this, because sometimes what you need to have in the soil to get it to grow is manure. You know, I got the front yard to finally grow because instead of just throwing sod over the same old spot time and time again, I actually got some of that good black cow manure and put it in there. Got some Miracle-Gro soil, threw a little extra on there, then put that sod on top, and my front yard suddenly looked really good. But it was the manure that made the difference. I don't know about you, friends, but I've spent way too much of my life running away from the manure on the inside that sits inside of my heart. A few years ago, and I count this really decisive moment in my life, it's coming out of the worst personal crisis that I've ever faced, and I wanted to be better and not bitter. Wanted to trust God that just wasn't going to put a band-aid on it, but I wanted to be whole. And by the way, I'm not claiming wholeness in this video, but the one thing that I started to do is I refused to turn my head away from the manure that seemed to be in my own life, and instead I started to embrace it. You know, how do you do that? You need to be really attentive to how you actually feel. You need to be really attentive to your own habits that you do every day. What do you do when you're stressed out? How do you cover up those feelings when that unholy trinity of I'm not enough, I don't do enough, I don't have enough, when those anxieties plague you? What do you do to cover it up? Do you suppress it? Do you self-medicate in some way? Do you do one of my most favorite things, just work and work and work? Cover that up? Or do you just let it sit there? You know, I got my front yard to regrow because I was willing to take a serious look and get a big bag of manure, all that stink, get my hands in it, spread it out on the yard, let it sit there, and then put the grass on top of that. And that made all the difference in the world. And I want to suggest today, as we think about those fruit trees and those flowers that we really want to plant, if you want them to be beautiful, if you want them to be fruitful, don't forget about the manure. Start in your own heart, take a really deep look at it, and trust God that when manure shows up, that manure is actually the fertilizer for deep, deep transformation. That's what I mean by deep dive spirituality. Thanks for taking a walk with me. If you'd like to have a conversation about the things that I'm talking about, I'd love to hear from you. How has manure in your own life spurred growth for you? Till next time, I'm Brian Russell. Live by faith, be known by love, and be a voice of hope to others. Amen.